Mad Dog Bites Back. Hi, this is Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And this is brought to you in part not only by the members of BillWhittle.com, but by our friends over at the Patriot Post, America's News Digest. We'll include a link to the Patriot Post in the description below. We invite you to check it out. Bill, James Mattis, the former Secretary of Defense, General Jim Mattis, who resigned late last year or early this year as a result of President Trump's decision to pull troops out of Syria, or at least at that time to announce that he would pull troops out of Syria, appeared at the Alfred E. Smith Memorial Foundation dinner in New York. This is an annual dinner where famous people get up and usually make jokes. And as during the course of that, General Mattis sort of slapped back at President Trump's recent insult. He was responding to reports, and I'm reading CBS News coverage here. He was responding to reports that Trump had called the general the world's most overrated general. Mattis joked that he felt like he had achieved greatness because he was not just an overrated general. I am the greatest, the world's most overrated general. He went on to say that he's honored to be considered that by President Trump because Trump had also called Meryl Streep an overrated actress. And so I guess I'm the Meryl Streep of generals. Bill, General Mattis has previously said that he doesn't comment on sitting presidents. People were disappointed that his call sign Chaos memoir that came out recently did not take shots at President Trump. And in interviews to promote it, he has refrained from talking about the president. Is this fair game since the president took a shot at him to give a little back in a joking manner?
It increases my respect for Jim Mattis, which was astronomical already. It is a longstanding and essential condition of a republic that the military is subservient to civilian control, and that is it's not the cornerstone, but it is certainly a major cornerstone of how this society works. And for him to refrain from kind of shooting back like that, I think is just a measure of his lifetime of professionalism. It seems to me that is the hand that is dealt, I think, pretty much throughout history to our military, that they can take it, but they refrain from dishing it out because it's unseemly. I think it's unseemly to call him the world's most overrated general as well. But I'm not surprised at General Mattis's professionalism.
So in this case, you didn't directly address the general coming back at Trump during this dinner. Granted, it was a joke, and they're supposed to tell jokes at the dinner. But with these things, it's kind of like the National Press Corps dinner that presidents have traditionally spoken at. A lot of what's said has more than a grain of truth in it. How do you read Jim Mattis now being willing to take a shot back at the president?
Well, I wouldn't really call it a shot back. I mean, a shot back would be for him to say he's the most overrated president or something along those lines. What he basically did was make a self-deprecating remark. And I think that was not only well within the bounds of what he's basically allowed to do in terms of decorum. I think it was perfectly appropriate for that kind of venue. It's not like he just suddenly appeared on The View and started, bashing the president and his policies. All he did was make a reference to an insult that had been directed at him, and he did it in a self-deprecating way. And my feeling has always been that people who are capable of self-deprecating humor are generally extremely confident and competent. Present company accepted, of course.
Now, I know that previous engagements probably meant that you had to give away your tickets to the Alfred E. Smith dinner, so you didn't get to see the whole thing, and you're just hearing about it now. So in fairness, the general also had at least one other comment about the president. He said, and this is quoting General Jim Mattis, former Secretary of Defense, "I earned my spurs on the battlefield. Donald Trump earned his spurs in a letter from his doctor." As some folks know, President Trump, at the time, young Donald Trump, received a deferment, a medical deferment, because of bone spurs in his heels. Are we still in fair game since this stretches beyond just self-deprecating humor?
Yes. I mean, the dinner in question it's a roast. That's the format of the dinner. It's a roast. And And that kind of response, I think is perfectly appropriate for that kind of venue. Again, if you're looking to make a story out of Mattis, swatting back at Donald Trump, I don't think you have a lot of grounds to stand on here. You've got a situation where he attended a press club meeting, which, like the Washington Press Corps thing, is essentially a roast, and it's understood to be a roast. It's understood to be a roast from the beginning. I guess it was the press corps event many years ago when George Bush appeared up on stage with the world's greatest George Bush impersonator. So for him to make a reference about Spurs is about as gentle poke as I can possibly imagine.
I want you to imagine with me now, President Trump is watching this on TV. Is he yucking it up along with the rest of the crowd?
I don't think he's yucking about it, Scott. But at the same time, I don't think it's anything he's going to get in a blood feud over. This is. Let me just put it to you as plainly as I can. If General Mattis had made those remarks about me, and me not being able to get into the Air Force because of my eyesight, if he made an eyesight joke, I would not hold a perpetual grudge against General Mattis. If the joke was on point like this one was, I'd actually be impressed.
Now, at the point we're recording this show, we don't yet know if President Trump has any kind of reaction to it. I have not seen anything yet, but that could be a factor of time, and maybe the president hasn't gotten up to full speed on his Twitter account yet. Let
me just add something here, because this is an important point. What you're trying to make out of this is General Mattis reacting. It's not General Mattis acting. It's not when I say acting, I don't mean pretending. I mean taking action. He did not do the lecture circuit or the book circuit or the insider circuit or any of that stuff. It's not like he suddenly came out, decided to make some anti-Trump or anti-foreign policy statements. He responded to what I thought was a pretty, venal remark about a guy who I consider who I hold in very, very high regard. And I think he handled it elegantly, and I think he handled it deftly. And I certainly don't think he overstepped the bounds of decorum in a way that I have seen so many other times before from various different people on both parties.
We talked about this a long time ago when General Mattis sent his resignation letter to the president that was made public. And even though it was subtle and somewhat veiled, it was clear that his differences of opinion with the president were substantial and terminal in this case, and meaning that it would end that relationship. And at that time, you commented about how circumspect he was and how well he handled that, and how the president was entitled to have advisors around him who saw things his way and who would, put into practice his orders. There's one final remark here that General Mattis made, and this is even more subtle than the others, and it's not really a joke. Sort of at the end of his remarks, he said, "We owe a debt to all who fought for liberty, including those who tonight serve in the far corners of our planet, among them the American men and women supporting our Kurdish allies." As you know, in recent days, as Turkey has begun to overrun northeastern Syria, as President Trump had previously given Turkish President Erdogan basically the nod, the green light to say, we're not going to interfere with that until after the fact when he threatened economic sanctions. As we record this, there's a 5-day ceasefire that is allegedly in effect negotiated with Vice President Trump. But President Trump
Vice President Pence, you mean?
I'm sorry, Vice President Pence, yes. But President Trump has not dialed back his rhetoric against what used to be referred to, as General Mattis refers to them, as our Kurdish allies. And he's basically implying that they're not that great. They did it for the money, and they don't have our best interest at heart. Is it, in your view, did Mattis handle this well, or should he have kept his mouth shut about that?
No, I think he handled it well. I mean, I think he, let me rephrase that. I think he handled it honorably. We get to pay close attention to the feedback we get from our members. We pay close attention to the feedback we get on YouTube. And I've noticed that there are on occasion where people where Donald Trump has been attacked so unjustly so many times, and not just Donald Trump, the entire conservative movement for 30 or 40 years now, there's this kind of reflexive sort of defensiveness about anything that can be considered a criticism of Donald Trump, as if suddenly, you're on the same team piling on. I disagreed with Donald Trump about this decision, and I lamented the loss of James Mattis, who I thought was the perfect man for Secretary of Defense. A number of people said, he's an insider, he's a swamp creature. Certainly entitled to your opinion, but I didn't agree with that. I don't agree with the decision that President Trump made on Turkey, and many people have said, well, you don't know the details about the Kurds and how duplicitous they can be and all the rest of it. What I value highly is the commitment that wartime allies make to each other. And I'm not just talking about one nation to another. I'm talking about the actual people who are out in the field risking and giving their lives for this country. If General Mattis, who was actually there for so many years in Iraq, if General Mattis felt that we were selling out people who had supported the United States, whether they were unsavory or not, I don't think there's very many savory people in that entire region. But if General Mattis felt like it was a betrayal of people who had fought at our side, then I certainly would be willing to say that is my interpretation of it. Well, I find that to be loathsome. I really do. But I don't expect perfection in anything. I don't expect it in Donald Trump, and I don't expect it in me either. I've been wrong about things before. I can't think of an example, but I'm sure it's happened. But there you go. What do you say? It is disturbing to me that people who we had fought with, who presumably we gave guarantees to as allies in a fight against ISIS, that we would abandon them, and not only abandon them militarily and politically, but I think this business of saying they're essentially mercenaries was a very poor decision on Donald Trump's part, and I think it was a very inappropriate way to look at people who had been pretty much the only people who were fighting on our sides in the entire region. Now, once again, I'm going to hear from people who tell me what a bunch of dirtbags they all are, and I have no doubt that a lot of that is true. But in a region like that, I think my final analysis comes down to, well, they may be dirtbags, but there are dirtbags, and they fought with us and beside us. And General Mattis has a sense of personal honor and personal ethics that I think, like most career soldiers, actually transcends politics. It's more important than politics. So it may in fact be true that both cases are true. I mean, both cases can be true. It can be true that it was wrong to sell out the Kurds from a military point of view, from a battle comrade point of view, and it may also be true at the same time. May be true that was the thing to do politically in the interests of the United States. That those two don't exclude each other. But just because the latter may in fact be true, it may have been the right thing to do. I'm not convinced it is, but it may have been. That doesn't eliminate for me the shame of it. I have always given military personnel and police officers not just the benefit of the doubt. I give them the benefit of living in a different world than I do, a much worse world. And they live there so that I don't have to. And so unless there is something terribly egregious, and we saw one of these cases on our Right Angle show this last week, unless there's a really egregious example, I'm inclined to take them at their word because they're there and I'm not. When you're under fire with people, and then you get a political decision saying that we are no longer going to be allies with these people, and your bond to them, I'm speaking of Mattis now, obviously, is strong enough, the connection between you and the Kurdish fighters personally is strong enough that you will resign your position over it, then whether you agree with Mattis, whether you agree with Trump, whether you think the Kurds are great or evil, whether you think Trump's move with regard to Turkey was terrific or a mistake, I don't care. At least I don't care in terms of the core of this particular issue, which is that I think as a soldier, General Mattis made guarantees and promises to people in exchange for their blood. And I think the idea that he would have to go back on those promises was so repugnant to him that it caused him to resign his position as Secretary of Defense. Many people will say, okay, he was the wrong Secretary of Defense. He's a warmonger. We need to get out of the region. I've heard that many, many times, and there's an argument to be made there. But to claim that number one, abandoning an ally, no matter what kind of ally it is somehow nothing to worry about. That to me is a road that doesn't end well. And I'm not willing to go there. I'm not willing to go down that road for the sake of either political expediency or financial concerns or any other reason. I think if General Mattis thought it was disgraceful to abandon the Kurds, I certainly understand the dynamic, even though I haven't experienced it. I understand the dynamic, and him being there and me not being there. And his reputation among the troops and his general leadership in combat, all of these things together make me believe that General Mattis has a standard of ethics and a standard of interactional morality that's based on the battlefield and not on the financial world or the political world or whatever. And I personally just have a great deal of reverence for that particular moral code.
The members of BillWhittle.com have created a refuge for civil dialogue away from the toxic sewer of social media at BillWhittle.com. They interact with each other in private messages, one to another, in comments, threaded comment sections, under videos and blog posts, in a blog that they write themselves, and now in a new forum feature that was just added this week to that. If you're not a member yet at BillWhittle.com, you can still come to the website and watch all of the videos, the archives of Bill Whittle Now and Right Angle and other programs. But to really engage in this community of conservatives, you need to become a member at BillWhittle.com. Just click that Become a Member link and you'll find out how. We're grateful to our friends over at the Patriot Post, America's News Digest, for helping to sponsor this and other episodes during the last several weeks. You'll find a link to the Patriot Post in the description below. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.